There's 7 of us. So our main goal tonight is to review the eligibility applications that are before us. At the end of the night, basically, we're going to get to a point where we go and vote. It's going to be simple, a yes or a no for the applications that come before us. And that will just determine to move them on to the next stage, which is the funding application. So, I guess just introducing our committee again. My name's Rob Levash, Chair of the committee.
Jenny Russell, Vice Chair.
Pete Jackson.
Wendy Garfield.
Linda Well.
Kathleen O'Donnell, I'm on committee.
Advisor.
Your advisor.
Council.
Council.
Julia Gatlin, Clerk.
Tom Callahan. Ted Carroll.
Right. So, meeting minutes approval for November 2nd minutes. Julia sent those out last week. Any comments, or I know Pete had some edits that were made.
I printed those out, if anyone wants to see them, your red lines here. Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I will abstain.
You were there. All right. So just a quick agenda that I want to go over tonight is just to look again at our fiscal year 2023 schedule. I have put out a proposal for a fiscal year 2024 schedule, just knowing how we went about this year. It's just a preliminary schedule, so we'll review that. We'll look at the 2023 budget again. I'm sure we all know kind of where our budget is, and also just a kind of division of funding that we're looking at. And then we'll look at the fiscal year 2023 updated application tracker. So I think I was very happy that we've gotten 14 applications to date. 2 of those we have rolled out, and possibly a third we might be rolling out as well. So we'll review that again. It's been printed out. I asked Julia to print it, so all of you have that in your packet tonight to look at. So it's in front of you, and I have transferred over some of the files. If we have any questions or anything that we need to look at in the applications, we can bring it up. And then,
Rob, sorry.
Yeah.
14? So
We
there's
had-
2 not on here?
so we had 14, 2 were ruled out. So I'll go over those. I will go through that, and you'll see kind of an update where those are. And then, so as a part of this process, I would like to bring up this traffic light categorization. That's basically just to focus us on these projects. I'd like to take a quick vote on the projects, just to kind of either green light, yellow light, red light, and I'll go through those categories. It's basically just to focus us so that when we go to vote, I'd like to take all the green categories, which we feel like are there, just to get them out of the way, and then we can speak to the yellow and the red light projects, so that those are more towards the end of the discussion. So we've all seen this schedule. Where we are tonight is at November 16th, where we're going to be reviewing all these applications. This will be our last meeting for the year in 2022. We will come together again sometime January 25th. I guess it would be good now to get that on our calendar. If does anyone have any issues with that date? I know it's a ways out, and it's a Wednesday. We're keeping with the Wednesday evenings, but we can go ahead and schedule that date for now. And that's when we will be reviewing the funding applications. So for any of the applications that we move forward tonight, they will have a little less than 2 months. It's about 2 months to get us back the funding applications, which are due January 13th, and that's been pushed out 2 weeks. I've given them another 2 weeks. Originally we had like January 1st, and that's been updated online now as well. And then just thinking through this, we split it up. I think it worked pretty well by doing some of the applications one night and then another applications another night. We're going to keep with that review, and then so it's basically 3 meetings. And then February 25th, have the final review of like what projects we will be pushing forward to go to town meeting. And May 1st, I think, is a scheduled spring town meeting, which the projects that we vote to go forward and fund, that's when
Mike.
we'll be.
Phone says February 25th is Saturday?
No,
January 25th.
January 25th, okay.
And what was the February date?
February 25th, did you say February 25th was a Saturday?
Yeah,
That might be wrong. That might be wrong on here. Could be. But in any case, I try and keep every 2 Wednesdays, so it's similar to this, but the good thing is we will have off for December, so we won't have the holidays and things like that. And right now, we'll keep those kind of dates scheduled. Yeah.
Is it possible that we could meet a little bit later on Wednesdays instead of 6:30?
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with, if, I would prefer like 7, if we can do 7.
I would as well. Not a big deal, but
Yeah,
Wednesdays are gonna be hard for me in the woods, but I'll try to make some
okay.
wrestling matches on Monday nights.
Did you get a date from the town as to when they would be closing the warrant for the May meeting?
I think they were even discussing it last night, so I'm not sure if it's,
Because that's our deadline. We have
So
to
when we
have
get
our
ready.
articles submitted by then.
I think we'll have enough time, but it'll be, if we can wrap it up by the end of February, I think it'll be close, but we should be fine.
I know it's
But-
gonna be either way.
Often, if they know that an article is coming, that,
Well, you
Yeah,
can
it's
post,
a
you
placeholder.
can have a placeholder that doesn't
Yeah.
have all the details, and just has the basic, yeah, we wanna have a space safe.
So, So the January 25th, that date looks good. The next one, January is not good for you. February 8th would be the next one, and it's February 22nd is the date, is the next Wednesday. So you're right, February 25th is a Saturday. So the important date, if we don't make all these meetings, I think it's okay, but I think like tonight, it's an important date. February 22nd is gonna be an important date. And right now, it's just kind of preliminary, so we'll put it there.
It is Ash Wednesday. I don't know if that's an issue for people, but it is Ash Wednesday.
Okay,
It's not an issue.
not
for
an
me,
issue.
but 22nd should be fine.
we'll just
Okay.
feel more charitable that day.
Yeah.
Won't be eating, beef.
We can have fish served at the meeting.
Yeah.
There you go. We'll be having filet mignon.
All right, so
So should we assume that they're there all?
let's assume for now the January 25th date's set, and we'll put that, we'll change that to 7 o'clock for Wendy. And
Just for me,
just
thank
for
you.
Wendy.
yeah, I'm
Well, if
with
it's just
you.
for me, I'd say 7:30.
The only problem is that the library kicks us out at 8:30, so we want to not have to meet here.
I'd prefer if we can meet in either of the 2 spaces, like the library is a much nicer spot for the public to come to. So 7 I think is good. I mean, it'll give us an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
we'll be pretty, I'll be
It'll
strict on the
fine.
time.
You'll have a deadline.
Yeah, well, and the last, if anyone who came to our last meeting, it kind of got off the rails a little bit, so we'll keep focused on the time, for
Anything you can
applicants.
do in 2 hours, you can do in an hour and a half.
Exactly. All right, so just looking ahead a little bit, and the only reason why I did this is to make sure that, so whatever we vote for tonight, just assuming that some projects aren't ready to go, there really is only 3 to 6 months with this new proposed timeline for eligibility applications. So what I set up was keeping 3 months open for eligibility applications, and then keeping the 3 months open for funding. Like right now, we only have 2 months. So, but that gives our committee time, which like 3 meetings in between, we kind of built that into the schedule. So eligibility applications would open up in March. They would close on June 1st. That's where that 3 to 6 months comes in for applicants to come in for that. We would review the eligibility applications between June and July. And then the funding applications would open up in August, would go to, they would be due in November, and then we would start this whole thing again. So, maybe there might be some room in here, I just wanted to throw it out there, and the main point is what's at the top of the slide is that, 3 to 6 months isn't a lot of time with holidays and stuff for applicants to go at this again, especially if they're, things just aren't ready, it might take them some time and they can go in for the next round of funding.
Are we required to do twice a year?
Are we required to do what twice a year?
The application.
The applications, I mean, I think this would be in the new, this would be a new year.
For
This
the
next
next year.
fiscal year.
Yeah, this is the next fiscal year, so,
Fiscal 24.
It's just moving it up in the year.
yeah.
So-
I think because we were so far behind, we were a little bit far behind this year, that we didn't really open up our eligibility application till a lot later, so this is kind of pushing it more towards the beginning of the year, because we had the plan, we had to get the plan done and all that.
And you could, if there was a fall meeting, you could have, in some, like Plymouth, for example, they usually did the CPA articles in the fall, not this one, because, it just sort of was better for everybody's mental health. So you could do your, your grants and if you did a special inside the fall, you could vote that money then, then you wouldn't have to wait a year, so it's not a bad idea.
Well, yeah, I don't really care, but I think in terms of whether it's fall or spring, but I think it would be good for folks that are gonna be applying if we can establish a consistent schedule and just, kind of, dates may change a little bit, but kind of stick to it so people think, oh, okay, every spring I've got.
And I would think that's the intent of what you're suggesting
Yeah,
here.
to get us
And it
back
loosens
on-
it up a
To-
little bit because we can start earlier in the year, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
That's a good idea.
if we pushed it to the fall, then we're back on this treadmill that we're constantly going, so
Yeah.
I was just trying to build this in a little bit more time,
Yeah.
and knowing that we're gonna be meeting, we're still gonna have to meet quite a bit between the applications and stuff, but,
I mean, I think, I like the schedule, I think the only thing I would raise totally as a question is whether or not, after this first year, we want to evaluate and discuss whether we want the two-stage, right, not every town does a two-stage application, I think there's some clear advantages to it in terms of feedback. And also allowing us to focus on the applications that make it to the second stage, which presumably is a slightly narrower group. But it does add some work for us as a committee and some work for the applicants because they have to sort of. So I don't have a strong opinion personally, but I think it seems to me that's a worthy discussion for us to say, do we need the two-track, or not two-track, but a two-stage process?
yeah, I think it's certainly helped a lot of these early projects. For some projects, maybe it wasn't needed, but I think even tonight it'll bring to head some issues, and then, I personally like the two-step, and I know a lot of towns or cities do it too, and so
But it's worth the discussion.
it's worth it.
Yeah.
Once we get through a first round or something,
Mhm.
it's worth the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think the feedback part is really helpful. I think you could accomplish that without necessarily having two deadlines.
Yeah. Or even having like these 2 review periods, like
Right.
maybe there's a way to streamline it a little bit instead of, but
It's a little more individualized, and you have a session with an applicant, or a group of applicants, and you give them 30 days to come back with a revised plan or something. Again, I don't have a strong opinion one way or another, but I think, we should be, since we're early in, this is our first year, we should kind of evaluate it.
I
Yeah,
think
I
from
mean-
the applicant's point of view, getting the feedback that, you really are not an appropriate use for this money, or your
Yep.
application is not in the range of anything we would do
Saves
right up front.
Saves them work.
Yeah.
Exactly, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
I
and
think that's the
kind of-
thing,
that's the-
for somebody to go to the stage of a full application, the time and effort put into
True.
it.
It's
To
a lot
only
more
be said
work.
you're ineligible or
Right.
You know, it's,
Yep.
the project's not ready to go.
Yeah, no,
So it's that, so
That is a good point.
But there's also some things like, you know, I don't know, other towns that have like, you know, you can put in these applications, eligibility applications all year long or whatever. I like having the time period though too, because to be honest, if you gave someone a year, they'd probably sit on it for a year until the deadline happens. Which we saw even in this eligibility application, we got a whole bunch in that last week or 2 weeks, so
Okay.
I like having the deadlines. In any case, the main point is that if we stick to this, we'll get 3 to 6 months for applicants to come forward. So the budgets, I'm not going to go over the whole thing again. The total available funding that we're looking at is $1.73 million. And if you were to equally distribute that in the 3 buckets, it would be around $576,000. Just good numbers for us to keep in front of us as we look at the applications that have come before us. So, Tom, to answer your question, these were the 14 applications that came before us.
Yeah, I just figured out.
So
Them in the library.
So unfortunately, yeah, the Milton Library, we've already discussed that, and that wasn't eligible. And then the Squantum Gateway, similarly, wasn't eligible. Sidewalk, it's a whole bunch of issues with that project. So we have gone ahead and emailed them letters already, told them that they weren't eligible. So before us tonight, and what's printed, we have 12 projects total. And so,
I
yeah,
just have a question that maybe others can reflect on and maybe not come up with an answer, but I'm curious about whether anybody has any insights about why the open space group is larger than some of the other groups, number of applications.
It typically is.
Is that just?
Yeah.
a lot of them are smaller and, you know, there's just a lot of things out there.
Sometimes there's that's traditionally the case.
Okay.
I think my disappointment is not that exactly, but that we didn't have any open space proposals.
there's not a lot of open space.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's, dropping some open space on the market, I mean, we don't really have,
A lot.
you know.
We don't have a lot of
And the
open
one that
space,
just
but-
happened, we did, I did it, and it was a 61A, and we sold it to historical landlord, so we didn't,
I think that there's open space to be looked at, and it can be conservation restrictions, it could be access easements.
yeah, but somebody has to apply.
Someone has to do it.
That's right, oh, absolutely.
And
And
so.
I'm disappointed that there were no applications.
Well,
all I'm saying.
in Wendy's experience, she knows the chair of Plymouth, and he's a real estate broker, so he goes out and he
Yeah.
hunts
Yeah.
for spots. And so he comes to this CPC himself with a deal in hand. But,
It's up to whoever
Plymouth
comes
is also
before the
100
board.
square miles.
exactly.
Yeah.
It has a lot of it.
A lot of land.
A lot of land.
All right, so as I said, we all printed out the 12 projects that are before us tonight. I want to just kind of go over at least the process that I see that to get it to organize us in our review, and it's pretty simple. It's just a traffic light categorization, but green light projects are ready for funding, and all of these projects we'll discuss as a committee, but I'd like to categorize them under these 3 things, because these are really the goals of the projects are to accomplish the goals of the CPA, establish a schedule, a budget's provided with itemization of major components, additional funding sources have been identified, committed, or under consideration, and there is support from town boards or community support. So a yellow light project may be on the bubble, right? It may not have all of those 5 pieces. There might not be additional funding sources. There may not be a itemized budget. It might be just a more generalized estimate, and it might even be missing some support from either town boards or community supports. And red lights are a red light would be a project that just has hurdles to overcome. and further discussion and commentary are to be discussed. So that is gonna fail in some of those categories just in general. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through these projects and take a vote tonight, like early on in this, to see where people lie. I'll leave up the green light, yellow light, red light, just so everyone can see. But let's kind of go through, and I'll go through from the first down to number 12. So I think you got it all printed out. So for the Affordable Housing Trust,
Rob, before you start,
yeah,
can I just, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make a statement about recusal.
yeah,
I do not think those of us who represent various boards should recuse
Right.
on those issues. I know Pete, 2 meetings ago, recused himself because of a
Financial.
It's financial.
professional interest in, financial
Exactly.
interest, which
Yeah,
is
we
totally
do that
appropriate.
Yeah.
But I just thought it would be good to publicly discuss that. I think just
No,
because
it's a
somebody's
good-
on Parks and Rec doesn't mean they should recuse themselves from all
Yeah.
Parks and,
No, you're right. And there's six
in my
members.
opinion.
No,
No, I think that's true, I mean, the reason
Yeah.
you have,
That's the reason we're on the committee.
That's the reason why you're on the committee. Yeah,
And you
so
don't have a financial interest in the decision. And see, my problem is that I'm a paid consult on that project, so I shouldn't be involved.
Yeah, no, that was
Got no
totally
problem.
appropriate.
But
and-
everybody else.
But I think,
it did come up though. It did come up in one of our
Yeah.
earlier conversations, and so that was my opinion. If there's no financial interest, and the fact is there's 6 members on this board, that everyone gets a vote. If you have a financial interest, that's a different story. So
yeah,
one of the projects that's on here, Pete will recuse himself. I think all the rest are open for everyone. Otherwise, you would have to recuse yourself
Right.
from 7 projects.
yeah, I think it, so I just wanted, again, because we're new
Yeah.
and because this is new to the town and to town residents, I think it's important to just put that out there and just make sure people understand why we're not recusing ourselves. So,
I agree.
okay.
So that came up, and then another just kind of procedural thing is there's 7 of us in the room, I think, right, for votes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. So if Rich was here, it would be even. And so hopefully we can work it out tonight. And there's nothing big if we
No
split a
ties.
vote or something like that, because just there was 9, and if Pete recused himself, then I think we can work it out, and we'll be able to get to where we need to go. So I asked to turn to your sheet. The Affordable Housing Trust is before us tonight, and so can I get a vote of hands of where for if this project would be a green light? Would you raise your hand if you think this project is a green light for funding?
And this isn't necessarily as exactly the amount, right?
No, this is literally our end goal for this meeting is to get to a yes or a no.
That we are inviting them to submit a proposal.
That we're inviting them to submit for a
I'd
proposal.
say it's a green light for me.
You want hands up?
Yeah, just hands up. Okay. How many for yellow? Okay,
You keeping track here?
So we see-
yeah.
see
How many, so there's someone who's a red? No?
No, I voted green.
Four.
Oh, you voted green. Okay, so four and 3.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
So it's a yellow.
okay, so,
So if.
what
if
it,
it's one that says yellow, then it's a yellow to be discussed, is that
Yeah.
what it is? Okay.
so,
We're looking for unanimity.
Yeah.
yeah,
Wait a minute.
exactly.
You're looking for unanimous yellow or green or red?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a lot there, then we'll change it. All right, so the Forbes house, who votes, is there any green votes for the Forbes house? We got one. Okay. Is there yellows? How many do we have for yellow on the Forbes house? 1, 2, 3. How many red light? I think that's, so,
So it means it's a yellow, right?
uh,
That means it'll be discussed.
it'll be
more.
discussed. I mean, honestly, all these will be discussed.
So what was,
Town-
what was
town-
the vote on that?
That was 1, 3, 3. Town lockup, how many votes do we have for green? How many for
Is
yellow?
that a green, Wendy?
I guess since I'm contemplating, it's not a green.
Okay.
Okay, so how many for yellow? 2? Okay,
So 5 too.
maybe we're just gonna get to all yellow anyways, and this will be just trying to. But it's good. I think it's good. It shows where we are. So, the Milton Fire Headquarters. How many green? 1, 2. So, to this point, I think
I don't think you can go on that.
I agree. So I think today, for me, I'm a red, and we can go in and discuss this because I think we can't fund the project.
We could briefly explain
Yeah.
that the issue with the fire station is that the statute says that CPA money can't be used supplanting funding that's already been voted. So you can't have a project that, like the fire station, if you voted $5 million for the fire station, you can't then after the fact say, oh, town meeting, guess what, we're gonna plug $500,000 from CPA money into the $5 million that you've already voted. So it can't be used to supplant funding that has already been voted.
So I'm gonna make it a red for now, Kathleen,
So-
and let's take it up at the end, because I also have
Yeah.
some other questions to follow up on.
But in
on
any way, that's the issue with the fire
So
station.
they're not expanding the budget, or?
Well, they could, if they expand the budget, then that would work.
But it's because that scope of work was already put out for a contract that we just can't go in and put it in there. So anyways, the Spalding Garden Masonry Stabilization, how many votes for green on that one? Okay, yellow? 1, 2, 3, 4. Red? That one will be yellow. All right, the Turner's Pond path improvement. How many
Yeah,
votes do we
refusal.
have? All right, how many do we have for green? All right, so the rest of us,
Everybody. Wow.
Winner.
Chicken dinner.
that's good. So that one becomes green. Milton's Farmers Market at the wharf. How many do we have for green on that one? 7. All right. Peverly Playground. How many do we have for green on Peverly Playground? Okay. How many do we have for yellow on Peverly Playground? 6. How many do we have for red? 1. Okay, so that one will become yellow. Pope's Pond Pedestrian Bridge. How many do we have for green? All right, we got 5 for Pope's Pond Pedestrian Bridge. Yellow? 2. Okay. I'm gonna make that one yellow. All right, so Milton America Baseball. How many do we have for green? 4. How many for yellow? 3. No, it becomes yellow. Number 11, pickleball courts. How many for green? How many for yellow? How many for red?
I would vote for yellow.
Okay.
I would.
All right, so two for yellow, and we got 5 for red. Okay. So that one's, I'm gonna put back in, and we're gonna put that one under red for now, and we're gonna discuss all these. It's just to go through it. So LED stadium lighting upgrade, green for that. All right, so we have 6. Yellow. 1.
Could
So-
I ask a question about what's category is that in? Is that,
The LED stadium lighting,
yeah,
it was under
is that
recreation.
flammable?
It's recreation.
Yeah, but
It's not a stadium. That's-
It's
they
not a
shouldn't use that
stadium.
word. There's
Yeah,
no
oh yeah, it
stadium
shouldn't
yet.
be stadium at all. It's literally just the
Softball.
lights.
It's
It's
softball
the-
field.
LED
Okay.
field lighting upgrade or something.
Existing lights, the lights already exist.
But there's no stadium out there, that's why.
No,
they-
No,
there's
no,
it
but the
should
other,
be.
so the lights already exist, you're replacing the lights?
It's a capital upgrade.
It's a capital upgrade.
Okay, we'll just make sure that it looks like that,
Yeah.
sorry.
I talked to Stuart about this.
He was okay,
He
yeah.
was fine with this,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
'Cause
so
I had that question too,
Yeah,
but.
it's not like, you know, replacing burnt bulbs or something.
Right.
Capital upgrade is.
Oh, yeah, it's a serious
Yeah.
capital upgrade, yeah.
so where we ended up was under green, you have Turner's Pond path improvement, the Milton's Farmers Market, and the LED stadium lighting upgrade. Under yellow, we have the Affordable Housing Trust, the Forbes House, the town lockup, Peverly Playground, Pope's Pond Pedestrian Bridge, and the Milton America Baseball. And then the two red are the Milton Firehouse and the pickleball courts. So let's go ahead and tackle the green categories that we voted on. So let's do the easy one. I think we all voted for the Milton Farmers Market, the Wharf Park. That came with 7 votes under green. Does anyone have comments on the Milton Farmers Market and Wharf Park?
It's a planning grant. I support it. I think it's worthy investment to try to figure out how to improve that space.
Anybody else?
Works.
So can we, let me go now. Hold on, sorry, I'm gonna go online now. Give me 1 second. So this, just so everyone knows, this application tracker is online, it's in the folder. All right, so we're right here. So what I'd like to do now is to take a vote, and what I'm gonna do is just put an amount there if we've agreed to pushing it forward, just so we understand where we are with our funds. So can I go ahead and get a vote for the Farmers Market Wharf Park?
To move it forward to the second stage application. So I want to be clear though, I think, right,
We are not,
even voting green doesn't guarantee funding.
Right.
yes,
Right,
this,
okay.
this
Okay.
literally,
Start with that.
all this is to do
Yeah.
right now is to go through and vote these projects to funding. If we vote them not to go to funding, they'll go on to another.
Yeah.
Did I just ask it for clarification? I thought that this part, you were taking these applications of interest, and then you were then gonna be notifying, as a result of tonight's meeting, notifying the successful bidders that they could come in with more detail.
With the full proposal.
Correct.
So that's all we are now, is looking for a vote to say, we wanna say to these people, yes, give us more
Yes,
stuff.
come back to fund,
That's right.
come back,
So-
yes,
So you shouldn't be putting in the funding because you don't know yet
Right.
what they're gonna be asking. You can have it as a,
It could be
as a
different.
guess.
it could be different,
It could be different.
So we're just
We
gonna.
could still say no when they come back.
Sure.
Absolutely,
Okay.
So
absolutely.
this is just to invite
This
them
is
to
just to
do
say,
the next
you've
phase.
done, you've
wanna
gotten
see-
over
we
the
wanna
first
see
hurdle, now you have to do the
Okay.
second hurdle, which is the full application.
right. This is for us, this is for bookkeeping, it could come back, it could be 50,000, 75,000. For me, and I think for all of us, it's good to have an idea of what funding that is going on that could be there, that could be allotted, that we're.
Yeah, but you're
I
not
wouldn't
doing
put it
that
out.
now, all you're voting on now.
All
is
we're
to
voting
say,
on now
could
is
we
just to
then
say yes.
yes to these folks and have them go forward?
Right.
So can I just add one other thing, is that when we write the letters to them to invite a full proposal, we can include recommendations for further discussion or description of X,
Collaboration.
Y, and
Sure.
Z.
Yeah.
So as we go through these, if there are any particular questions that you have about particular projects that should be included in those letters, they should be said.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think something like this one, and why I wanted to do the green ones first, there isn't a lot of commentary back. I think we're still gonna do like a blanket letter to them that we're looking for these 5 things that we get back for that application. But under the yellows, if we go and still push them forward, which I'm sure we will, we'll have more comments for them.
And I think we also should be especially clear, I think, with the ones that we see as red, why.
Yes.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and
The
make
letters will
very
be very
certain
clear.
about,
Yep,
that they understand why we're saying that, in case they want to come back next year or another funding cycle,
yeah.
so that they can much more closely match our expectations.
Yeah, and just so everyone understands too, I think the 2 months is a very short time. Pete and Jenny have agreed with me to divide up the letters, so hopefully by the end of this week, we're gonna get these letters out to all the applicants with the comments and what they need, because they have a short 2-month window.
Right.
And it's, I think, important to remember that it's not like applying to the zoning board or the planning board. If you get a no, it doesn't mean you can't.
You can come back,
next year.
so yeah, I think,
Keep coming back as
that-
long as
yeah.
you want.
yeah, and so that was the reason too, that I wanted to go over that proposed 2024 schedule. 3 to 6 months is not that far away, so that they can go reapply. And so if I see, it's not up to the board also to like make major changes to these applications. I just want to remind everyone that, and you know, I could see some changes, but if it's major changes, we shouldn't be the ones to say, you know, take your $1 million project and make it a 200,000 or whatever it is. I think that's something that we really need to clarify.
So, so we're gonna write letters, and just as an example, I drafted a letter for this, just so, you know, we can talk about it, whether there's other things that we wanna include in the letter, but just to get an idea of what are the kind of things our letter might say. So what I drafted to Scott McKay on the work part was, on behalf of the Community Preservation Committee of Milton, I would like to thank you for submitting an eligibility application, this inaugural run of proposals. We were pleased with the response and the interest. Your application has been accepted as eligible for CPA funding, and we invite you to submit a full application, which is due by January 13th, 2023. The final application should include the full scope of work, budget, and schedule for the project, as well as discuss how the project is consistent with the goals of the CPA and Milton's Community Preservation Plan. It is important that you work with the Park Department in finalizing your proponents as owners of the site, and identify a proposed public process in developing your plan. That was a comment that we had, you know, when we reviewed them last time. There should be a public process. I say a plan or aerial photo of the site will be helpful. You should also gather letters of support from other town bodies who are working on the wharf area, and from current users and neighbors of the area. So that's the kind of thing, you know, kind of telling them what they should be including, and then any comments
I
that.
was anticipating the yes vote on that.
I know, Pete,
Yeah.
We already
But I
we
guess-
do.
Is that already mailed to
But
them?
this
Yeah, I
is
know,
just,
right?
this is just, you know, kind of a draft, so we kind of get the tenor of what these letters might be. And then if tonight there are other proposals that people think, well, at the wharf, we should, you know, ask them to look at this, then we, you know, can add those kind of comments.
I think that's a very good start.
We could let it be.
Very helpful
Yeah.
for applicants.
So can I?
That
So
was the first draft.
so at this point, can I get a vote? Can we go ahead and vote?
Green?
Well,
We
it's
already voted.
the vote is
To move it forward.
to move it forward to
Second
fund.
stage, so that's second stage.
So this is affirmative yes or no vote to move
Yes.
to the second stage.
Are all those in favor? All right, so the next project that we can go over is the Turner's Pond Path Improvement. Pete's gonna abstain from this one. We did have six yeses or 6 greens under that. Do we have any commentary on the application itself? Similar to the farmer's market. So all those in favor? Alright, so that was easy. Next one is the LED stadium lighting upgrade. There was six that had voted for green, there's 1 yellow. Any commentary, or who voted yellow?
Did I?
I think it was Wendy.
I think it was, yeah, it was me. No, I think I'm gonna change my vote to green.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Is there any other commentary that anyone has for that project? So all those in favor of that project? All right.
We just need to take out stadium.
Yeah, all right,
That was
well,
on the letter.
that worked well. All right,
So
so
far, so good.
so far so good.
Great.
So that was helpful. All right, so yellow, we have seven projects that are yellow. Let's do the first one, the Affordable Housing Trust. 4 were green, 3 were yellow. Open up to comments from anyone on the board.
I could use some help understanding the way it was presented, that money would leverage more money from developers. I don't understand how that works.
So, yeah, Kathleen, you can go ahead and speak to this if you want.
So, in full disclosure, I represent 7 or 8 affordable housing trusts as their council. And the affordable housing trusts use money from the community preservation funds when they're in towns to have in their bank account, and they have a separate bank account that they maintain. And they use those funds to participate in projects, to put money into a project so that they get more units, more affordable units is one situation. I'm working with 2 towns who have tax title properties from their town that have now gone out to bid with Habitat, and Habitat's building duplexes. And so the Affordable Housing Trust is providing funding for the engineering and the development and the permitting and all that sort of stuff for those 2 duplexes. And so that's the way those funds are used. So it's difficult with $500,000 these days to buy anything, to say a town is going to do an affordable housing project. There's not enough money. But you can participate in projects that are done by private developers. And so that's the leverage idea, is that, I represent Falmouth, and Falmouth will put $500,000 into a project to buy down the affordability from 80% to 60%. And they participated, it's a tax credit deal, and we're one of the participants in the pot.
So it's not to leverage money, it's
It's
to
the
leverage
leverage,
units,
yeah,
affordable
leverage units, affordability.
We can also leverage money.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
a lot of the state financing programs
Yeah.
will require local participation.
Right.
And sometimes that's in the donation of free land or discounted land, but often it's subsidy from the local municipality, because that will make us more eligible or more competitive to compete for these really highly competitive state grants. So developers and towns, municipalities all across the state are competing for a fixed pool at the state level, and if we can put in, whatever, but local money, we're going to get more points in those state competitions, basically. So that's
That's the leverage.
that's
Yeah.
another
That's the
leveraging factor.
Okay.
Also, you can then, when you're negotiating with developers, you can sometimes get them to do more because you can offer something, to what Kathleen was saying. So.
Tom,
But that's not really leveraging, is it? And maybe
Well,
that's
it's,
just,
what the leverage is, what it's saying, leveraging is that you've got this amount of money,
yeah,
and what you're being able to get with it is a lot more. So,
because you're telling a developer, yeah, if you do X, if I do Y, you'll do X.
well, you put money into the project, and so a developer will say, well, if I can go through a state program and get tax credits and stuff like that, I'll do 60% of area median income instead of 80. And so if the town the Affordable Housing Trust can put $500,000 or $100,000 into that project, it makes me look better when I go to the state for these tax credits. And so what is leveraged is that the town has gotten, for $100,000, we've gotten 60% area median income affordability on a project. So.
Kathleen, is this a common use of CPA funds?
Yeah, because as I said, you've probably heard this story before, but when I was on Governor Romney's task force for 40B, there was a lot of yelling about the fact that towns had CPA money and were only using it for open space and weren't using it for affordable housing. And I mentioned to the fact that, you know, unlike a city where everybody lived, where they have a city council that meets once a week, Lincoln, for example, that I represent, meets once a year. And so you can't be doing affordable housing if you're only meeting once a year. So if there's an availability for a project, or like in, for example, in Lincoln, we had a condo unit that was going up to bank foreclosure. We could step in and buy that unit from the bank and then put an affordable housing restriction on it. But we would have to wait for a year for a town meeting, that's not gonna happen. So this idea for these affordable housing trusts was to provide flexibility, because affordable housing trusts don't need a town meeting vote to decide to just.
Tom, do you have any idea what the balance in Milton's affordable for the trust is?
We have about 700,000.
So if we did this, we'd be up to 1.2 million or something like that, which gives us that much more leverage.
Do you know how much you usually spend on an annually basis, or?
Well, we haven't spent any money yet, because we haven't, the 700,000 is all pretty, the vast majority of that is pretty recent, right? We have 400,000 approximately from the Pulte sale of the 2 affordable units in East Milton on Church Street. That was kind of, it's a longer story, but that was negotiated with Pulte. Those proceeds just came. So 400 of the 700 is brand new to it. And to Kathleen's point, you can't really do much. It costs minimum probably $250 to subsidize a unit, right? Construction costs of $500,000 roughly. You got to sell it to an affordable buyer at 200.
I think though, like, what the application was, we have these 8 goals, right, that are up on the board right now. And so, they're all lofty goals, and I think for me, I would just like to see, like, what, and it may not be that easy to do that, but like, what is the cost of putting some of this money into action? What is that RFP or whatever? And regardless, it's gonna come back to you need to provide proof back to the committee anyways of the funds that are spent. And, so I think, even though it's vague and the goals are lofty, I think it would be helpful to get a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the trust, and I voted yellow, not because I don't support this. I think this is an excellent policy. The reason I voted yellow, I was mostly yellow on this, because I think almost all of them, need a little more work in terms of, and I agree with Rob, I think this proposal, we should ask them to refine it a little more. And there's some things facing the trust, right? Town Farm being one of them.
Yeah.
This money they could lay out a budget, the trust could lay out a budget for us of how they would propose to use this money at Town Farm. They may not end up doing that, because if Town Farm somehow got waylaid, then they could repurpose it for those other goals.
Right.
So we understand that, but I think
I think it would be helpful to drill down in some of these, because it's not a big, it is a big sum of money, and then we're gonna come before a town meeting, and someone's gonna ask, what are we doing with this $575,000?
Well, you can't spend it on anything else, is the important thing to remember, is that it's required under the statute to set it aside for affordable housing, so it's not like you're stealing it from historic preservation or open space or something
Right.
else. It can only be used for affordable housing.
Well, the 10%.
10% would
10%.
Can be, but we're getting 30%.
Yeah, but
33%.
10% has to be, and
Right.
that's every year. And the other thing I would remember is that you can be doing it this year to get an affordable housing trust off the ground. That does not mean you do that every year.
Right.
It
So
is
1 year
typical of the affordable housing trust that I represent to get a slug of money when they first start and when CPA first comes in. And then, they're not project specific at that point, because they're just getting off the ground. And so you wouldn't be saying that I want to see details on which housing you're going to unit, because you don't know that yet.
Right.
And so it's sort of like seed money for a trust that's just getting started. So I wouldn't be looking for the sort of details on exactly what they're spending it on, because they don't know yet.
So can
But
we-
a budget would be, like, someone's gotta have some organization somewhere to figure out a budget, and there's a lot of these goals. So I think a little bit more detail would help.
Yeah,
help shape
I think walking that line between I agree with Kathleen, not requesting a project-specific
Yeah,
budget, because there's not a project, it's, at least
It's not
right
coming yet,
now,
right.
that is far enough along
To say I need a
to plug a very specific gap. However, you know, the town is working with Mass Housing Partnership to develop an RFP for the town farm site, so very conceivably, well before our next funding round, they could be in position to say,
Here's
we've
X amount.
we've got X amount to
Right.
plug into this, and that's gonna make that process go much faster and smoother in terms of attracting a developer. You know, I think Julie might have said this, but, you know, that's the other aspect of this is developers will see a trust that has seed money, to Kathleen's point, and say, oh, that's a town I wanna deal with.
Right.
And I will spend my time, speaking of filling out applications, right? It's a big deal to apply, to respond to an RFP. You know, developers put a lot of resources into doing that, and they don't want the town to pull the rug out from under them and say, whoops, we were only mildly interested in that and we've moved on. But once it's in the trust, that's a signal to the developers, the town is serious about, you know, doing something with that.
Almost all these projects have tied to construction costs, right? The Jonas Pond is looking for 75, we can't say we're gonna give you 50 because that doesn't feel good.
Well,
This,
this doesn't.
So this
well,
one-
The decision we're making today is money related.
I don't think we should say,
I'm
yeah.
asking about this,
Yeah.
so I don't know where that 576 come from.
So
Is that,
in the the applicant asked for a third of the money. So that's the 576 is our 1.73 budget divided by 3.
They're
We don't have to grant them, it's up to
can't
the
we grant them
committee.
10% or 20%?
Yeah,
We can do whatever.
I mean, we're
These other
required,
projects, you can't really do that because it's a construction cost and we can't say we're gonna give you less.
yeah, and
But it's not, this ask is not.
this ask is a lot different than
Thank
the other
I
ones.
mean, I certainly would support a third, but I think something that's important that's in their eligibility proposal that's important, that is in the full proposal. It says all specific work taken by the AHT that utilizes CPA funding will be clearly documented and within the requirements set forth by CPA.
I mean,
that
it's
gives
required.
Yeah, it is required, but I mean, it gives us the assurance that they're not gonna use this for administrative costs or something, so I
We
think,
typically do a grant agreement, and I brought it to the last meeting, and I can send that to you
Yeah.
as a copy.
but I think it's great. I think it's
But it
great
is,
proposal.
I mean, it's a good point, because not every affordable housing trust has been the most transparent vehicle around the state, I mean,
Yeah.
and so, you know, as a member of the trust, we will be very transparent, but I think we, as a CPC member, we wanna make sure through a grant agreement that we're getting accurate,
Proper-
regular,
proper
proper
use of funds.
reporting back of like where every penny went.
So, I mean, my own feeling is that we have 3 buckets of money. This applicant came before us and asked for a third of the money. There's cities like Cambridge that have, you know, fund 80%. So I think it's fair. I think this is a budget. Let's be realistic. Milton has under 5% of its housing stock is affordable. So I think we have a long way to go in Milton to really put forth affordable housing. So I would be a strong proponent of this application.
I guess I'd make a motion then that we take a vote to, to invite them
To invite them to submit a funding. Doesn't mean, yeah, as we go forward, we will take a vote on how much we fund, but
Yeah.
I think, so take a vote to go to funding. All those in favor?
So that's basically making it green.
Yeah.
Make,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
essence,
yeah.
it makes it green, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to some of the easier yellows. Town lockup, that was 5 greens and 2 yellows. Any commentary, discussion on the town lockup award? Anybody who voted yellow?
I think I voted yellow. I support this moving forward. I would be a yes vote. I just, again, I defaulted to yellow on a lot of these, just because I think I want to see more about, I've always been confused about the use of this versus the ownership of this, and, building, and I think public benefit. I would like to see them flesh that out a little more. This always feels like a private space to me. It's an important historic resource in town, clearly, but I don't understand all the politics of.
Well, you weren't at the
history.
last, you weren't at the last,
So I'm
at the last
hanging
meeting.
on from that.
So
So
this
maybe-
will go out to an RFP,
Okay, great.
and so we
Yeah.
don't know yet who's
Yeah.
gonna be the user of it, and so I think
But
that
I
should.
think with all this money, the public benefit part, I think we could encourage all of our applicants to really talk to us about how the public benefits from this in multiple ways, hopefully, so. That'd be, but I would be a yes vote on this, as a no.
Any other commentary on the town lockup? Can we move to vote this one for funding? All right, all those in favor? All right, the Milton Fire Headquarters, I think Kathleen gave a good explanation about the supplanting the money on that project. My question to you, Kathleen, was future funding, like Atherton, we know is there's probably a lot of historical pieces in that. Would that also fall under supplanting because it was voted at town meeting? The whole 3 projects were voted for under that, or would it not?
Well, I think on that one, they don't have, final
They don't have a
construction
contract.
They have a construction contract for the central fire station.
Right.
And they don't for Atherton. So if they do the Atherton one, they're probably, there's probably not enough money, or even if there is, they could come back to us, I guess, and say, we want to add, this money to do the historic park. But it can't be in the contract that was voted on by the town.
I agree.
So if there's a, but
So
there's
they
an
come to us and
amendment,
say, that we're gonna enhance this project by, investing in these preservation
Mhm.
elements, and for those elements, we'd like to come to the CPA.
right,
I think
right,
that's,
that would work.
that would work.
So in their proposal, my understanding, right, my memory is that they had a lot of different, right, they had the repointing, they had the slate roof.
The problem is their contract that went out, Tom, that work was
It's already
already
in.
contracted. for-
Even like the slate roof as opposed to,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think,
I think so.
yeah, well, for instance, no, the slate, if they
Yes.
asked for money for the slate roof, they didn't ask, I don't believe,
They didn't?
was it in there?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was in
I
there?
thought it was, yeah.
Slate roof replacement including gutters.
So that might be,
but
I
I
don't
said they
think,
have to have a contract amendment to add.
right, so I think that might be the discrepancy, is I don't think the slate roof, it probably was, that's like an upgrade, and so
Right.
that might not have been in the contract, but the
But it
repointing
is.
and stuff was.
It is in the contract.
In the construction
All this
contract?
stuff, yeah, is they indicated that
Yeah.
all this stuff, masonry pointing,
Mhm.
masonry cleaning, exterior masonry open, slate roof replacement, window replacement, overhead
All
door
that stuff.
replacement, entry door replacement. That constitutes what they're coming to us for, and it's already.
It
part
was
their
all of
contract.
that work was
That's
in
all
that,
part of
in the
it.
contract? Okay.
So is that from verbal testimony? Because
No, this is.
No, they said
this
that
was
the
their
other
They
day.
proposal.
said it in the last meeting.
Last meeting.
that's verbal testimony.
No, in their application to us,
In their application, it's
they
due.
list all those things.
Yeah, but that doesn't, so I'm looking at the application right now.
Oh.
That doesn't.
Verbally, they told us it was in the contract.
Okay, that's different, okay. And I apologize, I missed the last meeting,
Yeah.
so, but.
I've got a lot of other problems with that.
No, but that's the issue, Tom, is that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
already in
No, I get,
the vote.
okay, I just didn't, assume because they had listed it in the application that it was in their contract.
So,
I think
so,
one thing we could do with this one is not to say no outright, but we could say, if you want to resubmit with additional, knowing that it's above and beyond the
But
existing
then
contract.
they need a town, well, I mean, the problem is that they'd have to go back to the architect,
yeah,
and he could, you know, go back to contractors, and the whole thing could get rebid. And
I
who would
think,
wanna do that?
yeah, so I think we should not do that. I think we should vote tonight. I don't wanna, we don't wanna as a committee go and make major changes to applications. And so, to me, it's clearly a supplanting issue, so I think we should vote no on this one. So all those in favor of voting no on this application? Okay.
I would, I don't know, but I would say that I would like our communications to reflect back to the fires, that we are open to future.
The Atherton, that's why I asked the
in
question.
Atherton,
Right.
yeah, particularly, obviously Atherton would be the only one, because the other ones are brand new.
Right.
But,
Yeah, we definitely should go back to it.
and let me just say this further, I think I'm particularly sensitive to this because, obviously I was personally part of the Yes campaign, the political campaign that got this, that convinced 74% of voters in Milton to vote for this. And fire stations were not an insignificant centerpiece of that campaign. I mean, there were other things, we talked about open space and housing and recreation and stuff, but fire stations, so I think it'd be fair to say voters might want to see some of the money from CPA, not necessarily first year money, but go to support.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like, if it wasn't a supplanting issue, I think it's.
We would have voted.
I think we would have funded it, it's just kind of bad. I know Pete would have, and you know, it's interesting, because I had a little bit of a conversation today about this, you know, what's the use of that building and et cetera. So, but in any case,
Yeah.
it's a no, and I think we will, I think when we do our letter back to them, we can say, you know, there'll be other opportunities, and I don't even think, when Brian explained the projects at last meeting, he also said Atherton was probably gonna be the last one in the queue now too, and the next one will be East Milton, because they're having issues with that firehouse, so it may not be until a bunch of years down the
But
road that
I
they
think
come in.
it's important that they come in advance.
Yes,
And
before they
the
get out of
second-
contract.
But the other thing that I think this process missed is they really didn't coordinate with the historic commission, you know, or, you know, look at the Secretary of Standards for historic preservation in developing these proposals. And I don't know that they do or they do not, but leery whether these meet Secretary of Standards. And so I think we in our letter, we should say it's important that you coordinate closely with the Historic Commission in developing, projects that you're going to bring forward.
I mean, every historic preservation project that gets funded with CPC money needs to be, the Secretary of Standards. So I think that's just a qualification of it.
So, but in the no letter, would we also mention the supplanting issue, or would that just open back?
That's the reason why. I think we have to
That's the
mention
main
it.
reason.
Yeah.
That's the main reason we can't do it.
In addition to communicating that to the applicant, I think it's also important, Rob, that we share that information at town meeting, so that the general public and voters understand, because I think you're right. I think that there is this perception that, one of the great uses of using CPA money is for things like fire stations. And if it gets back to the general public that, well, yes, there was an application and we turned it down, I think it's very, very important that the public understands why we turned it down.
Yeah.
And that, there's so many nuances to this law, so many details that we're required to follow, of course. And, perhaps you could just briefly share something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a good point.
No.
Yeah.
And it's really not out of our hand, right? We can't,
Right.
we can't supplant it.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
but yeah, no, I think that's a good
because the voters are gonna, have to
Absolutely.
reinstate the CPA a few
Right.
years down the road, and we wanna make sure that.
Well, but I think, I felt so sad for Brian when Brian Washington was explaining it, because
I know.
they put it in the contract on the theory that
I know,
CPA
CPC.
funds would be available. And so, they sort of put
Yeah.
they put it in there because they thought, oh, we'll get that.
It's just
And-
bad timing,
It's
a
it's a timing issue.
And
really
it
is a huge
completely screws us up, because
Yeah.
if they had left it out, it, would've been great, you could just do an amendment.
And it's
pop it
also,
in.
and it's also really unfortunate,
Yeah.
because construction costs are through the roof. So,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen is that last fire station is gonna have a big budget shortfall, so any little bit would help.
Mm.
So it's unfortunate, but
Well,
it's
maybe
the
we can
case that
help
we're,
with that.
hopefully we can help the Atherton out more, right? So, and I know that budget too will be a lot more expensive than the central one, so. All right, next project that I have on the list is the Spalding Garden Masonry Stabilization. We had 4 yellows and 3 reds. I'll open it up for commentary.
Comment.
Yeah.
It was presented to us as they were gonna hire some unknown mason to just get out there with some mortar and fix some cracks, and of course that's repair, but I think we're in the business of doing things right and doing them well, and I think what they really, if they want us to invest in it, they should, number one, it's gotta meet secretary standards. Number two, so they need someone experienced with historic masonry restoration to evaluate the project, make recommendations, and develop a realistic budget, and it's not $5,000. So I think personally, I'd invite them to submit a proposal, but tell them that they really have to have a project that meets secretary standards, that is based on realistic estimates from a qualified mason, and maybe they don't go for all the masonry needs of the garden, maybe it's a section or something, but it should be done well and done completely. And I think, so I'd be willing to invite them to submit a full proposal, because I think it'd be a great use of funds and great public, and I think the public access to the gardening stuff was another thing that was discussed about
Yeah,
in our
that's,
meeting.
so I agree with you.
So I
I
think
think
both
that's
of
a
them.
big issue to your point,
Public
was like,
benefit.
what is the public benefit for those gardens? I don't know where it is now. I think it was spoke about, but I think if they could build upon that and get it more accessible for the town, this is town money. And so I think that would be a huge benefit. And I just don't see it right now, and so,
I don't see it to the point where it almost sounded like it was open, but only if you ask me.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'll meet you there at a specific time.
Yeah,
Right.
it can't be,
It can't be
we
that.
can't fund something like, in my opinion, I'm not legally, but I just think we can't, that's not what we should be doing.
It's not a priority for our funding, I
Right,
believe.
right. I think we really need, this is public taxpayer money, and we need public access to all these.
I agree. I think
Or public benefit, I should say, but.
that's why I would be a no on this project as the application stands today. That's not saying
Oh, yeah.
down the road that they couldn't open it up more for public use
Right.
and get a estimate that would restore it properly.
So you don't think that if we invited them to submit a full proposal and told them these elements that needed to be addressed, you don't think between now and January they could address those?
Well, I think we should invite them.
And that's
I
up to
think-
them.
I disagree, I would give it a red light, I would say, this is not,
Not ready?
it's a very low to no priority in terms of using these funds for the public good.
So what if they, just hypothetically, what if they got this feedback from us and really impressed us with a
How
plan?
open
a plan
and
to-
used
yeah.
by the public it
Yeah.
was. then I would look at it again. But I think the way it was presented the other night, it was pretty clear that, yeah, it's open to you, but you have to talk to me about it, and I'll meet you at a certain time.
Yeah, that's.
It wasn't,
So I guess the question is, do we give the applicant that feedback and
So they
they
know
either
it.
respond or don't adequately?
I just would give it such a low priority. I would say that if you want to come back, it needs to be clearly established that you're going to be able to convince us that there is some public
agree.
good that's.
For me, it's
I
a,
agree 100%.
for me, it's a far reach, Tom, and
Okay.
so if we think about it, that's why I wanted to put that up there, 3 to 6 months, maybe, gives them a little bit more time to think about it and redo their application, get actual bids to figure out what it costs to
For
restore it.
starters, yeah.
That, also the space, if anybody who hasn't been there, it's not accessible, so it's not,
I don't know where it is.
it's a hard space to get to and to walk around, so for me, I think it needs some work to get to the point where it would even be eligible.
I just have a question for you all to think about, is that, in my experience in some of the towns I've worked with, the idea that you give money to a private entity, like the garden club, on private property, has usually meant that we get a historic preservation restriction in return, or an easement, or something like that, that we get as keeping in mind that this is money that comes from real estate, so it's dirt law, it's dirt money, and so that you get some interest in some dirt in return for it. Now, on the town property, it's already town property, that's not the situation, but when we've done grants in Plymouth, for example, to a museum or something like that, we've gotten like a series of historic preservation restrictions, like, I think there are 5 on the Plymouth, on the Puritans Museum or something ridiculous like that. But we've gotten an easement, access easement to the Paul Revere Bell in the church, that sort of thing, that we've gotten an interest in real estate in return for the cash. These folks, this is a restriction, I don't know that they own the land, but there's a restriction on it that expires in 10 years. And so when we would, but it's just sort of a philosophical question that doesn't need to be decided now, obviously, but going forward, is that something that you folks are gonna think about? Is that when you are giving grants to Forbes Museum, for example, or the Garden Club or something, are you gonna get a restriction or an easement in return for the cash?
You're required, right?
No, it's required if it's town land purchased with CPA money. So if the town buys open space with CPA funds, they have to impose a perpetual restriction on it. And so that's for an acquisition of purchase by the town. Giving money to private organizations, which is something that we do with CPA funds, is usually in return for a historic preservation restriction, a conservation restriction, something. It's not just an affordable housing restriction, there's some interest in real estate that comes back. So that would be an issue for them to consider, is that, yeah, we might give you the money, but you're gonna have to give us a restriction.
Right, but the complication that you bring up
Yeah.
is that in 10 years, we don't know where that will be.
Where that
That's
garden-
the
Well-
case, but I don't know for sure. You think they've just got an
I read it.
easement?
So is it,
There's a restriction on the land, I don't know,
Oh.
I think they own it, but the restriction that it be maintained as a garden
Right.
is only for another 10 years.
oh, okay, what they own, they
They
are
own
the
it,
owner.
they could
Well,
sell it for
I'm a
someone else.
member of the Milton Garden Club.
Yeah.
I don't feel qualified to speak about the nuances of this property, because it is complex.
Yeah.
And, but I do know that the Garden Club is a 501c3,
Yeah,
right? So it's not private. per
well,
se.
but I mean, it's, as I said, it's not a town entity.
Not a town entity,
As
right?
opposed to,
And the garden is something that, that is quite complicated to general members. Like I said, I don't know all the details, but I think that it would be worth finding out more of these details for us to make a more educated decision about whether or not to fund this, if it is in fact something fundable.
What details would you want to see?
Well, I think, to your point, the accessibility is important.
Yeah,
You know, it's,
I thought you meant something specific other than what we talked about, so.
well, I mean, accessibility as far as, the general public being able to have,
Access.
yes, yeah, exactly. But also I think we need to be consistent, so, I'm looking at our list here, the Forbes House, it's also 501c3. It's not on town-owned land. It's something that, yes, the general public has access to, but not any hour of any day.
The open space on the property is open to the public.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I've been on the
Okay.
board, and that was part of the discussion, was how do we get the public to use that area around the house more, because it is open to the public anytime, any day.
Oh, interesting.
You can take your family and have a picnic on the lawn. You can take your dog over there as long as you pick up the poop.
That's great.
It is open, the property is open.
So you can go and park in the parking lot, enjoy the grounds.
And enjoy the grounds.
Which is a big difference.
That is a big
That's
difference.
that land is private, so
Yes.
if you're trespassing if you go on this piece of parcel, under what I would deem,
You
and
mean
if
not
any,
the Spalding
if
Garden?
any person went and walked on Spalding Garden, it's not it's owned by the garden club, right? And I don't know I don't know how accessible it is. I don't think it is very accessible.
I
Well,
think
it's not only accessibility, it's not only whether it's accessible or not, it's, it falls into almost the promotion of it, right? If I don't know where it is, I've lived here 27 years, and if, I'm hearing, that it's complicated, so it's access, but it's also promotion of that access.
Right.
Right? And I think the burden is on the owner or the applicant to do that promotion.
Right.
And that can take a variety of different forms of posts and, articles in the Milton Times and, just like, hey, town, this is a resource, take advantage of it, type of thing. But I think, to me, this conversation, I think it sounds like from a committee point of view, we're, at least of those of us that have spoken, we're on similar pages here. The question is, should we invite them to fix this from our perspective, or should we say, no, wait till next year? And this project and other projects that are in this type of category, I would lean almost always, I think, towards allowing them to try to fix it, given that they're hearing hopefully this feedback, and some projects will have a higher hurdle to fix than others, and this one clearly does have a pretty high hurdle. But I would lend, again, public building support for this law in town. I think it's better for us to err on the side of giving them an opportunity to come back with a better plan, even though we may think it's a tall task.
You'd have to tell them whether they are gonna have to sign some sort of an easement.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I
I'm
mean,
fine
that-
with putting our demands out there, essentially. So I would vote to.
I think there's a lot of demands that we would have to put out there, so we've discussed them, but I'm willing to open it up to a vote unless anyone else has any other comments.
I just want to second, Tom, I appreciate what you just said, because to me, it's putting giving them the benefit of the doubt, if you will, and it's sort of our good faith that they can present themselves in a different way that convinces us.
But isn't what we're doing tonight just saying it doesn't look like your application will succeed going forward if you take the next step? in our estimation of what we saw.
Well, a no
It-
vote,
That-
my interpretation of a no vote is we're asking them, they're not advancing to submit a.
Correct.
We're not inviting them to submit a second.
But that doesn't preclude they're doing it.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
really?
they
Yeah.
would have
Nah,
to-
yeah,
they
that's
could
So
it.
apply
that's my
again
That's
next
concern
it.
year.
with.
Tonight-
Wow.
Tonight,
Okay.
if you got no, it's,
You're out.
For this round, you can apply next year.
you can apply next year, but that's it.
Okay.
That's what a no
I
vote
think-
means tonight.
I mean, I guess, you know, listening to some of the hurdles that we think they've got to overcome, the access to the public and promote it, and the restriction, illegal restriction, real estate restriction, and what we're asking them to do with the standards for development, that's a big thing there. And maybe if we do invite them and tell them what they need to do, maybe if they're smart, they'll say, well, you know, maybe
Well,
we'll
wait
do
till
it next year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's
No,
the,
that's-
so here, I'm looking at the, you know, the guidelines from the Department of Revenue. And so the problem with historic resources is that for CPA purposes, it has to be a building, structure, vessel, real property, document, or artifact that is listed on the State Register of Historic Places, or has been determined by the local Historic Preservation Commission to be significant in the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of the city or town. Now, I don't know
I'm not
that
sure
the
if
Garden
it is.
No, I
Club
think
has
the
reached that.
conservation-
I don't think
conservation
that
has.
they've reached that threshold.
I think the historic commission has recognized it as such.
No, we haven't. We haven't
No.
discussed it at all. It
Okay.
hasn't come up.
So there's another hurdle.
There's
I
another
mean,
That's a big hurdle.
it's a big hurdle.
hurdle.
I mean, I just see, you know, there's at least four things that we keep putting up there. I will mention again, January 13th is the date to get this back in. So it's, for me, it's a lot of hurdles to go for. I understand where you're coming from to give applicants the benefit of the doubt, but also they get 3 to 6 months to come back to us next year and redo their.
So, you know, maybe the thing is to, you know, tell them all these things that they would need to do and say,
Let them decide
well,
if they're able to.
we can
complete
let
the
them
application.
decide and let them go forward, or just, you know, tell them that you might need more time, but.
I mean, the other thing is, we're not talking about $1 million. We're talking about,
Right.
I don't know what it is, but $5,000 isn't, to Pete's point.
He made a great point.
It's gonna be,
That's
it's
not.
more
It's-
like
it's-
25, I would think, is a
Yeah,
minimum.
it's, you would be surprised, you sneeze these days and you spend $25,000.
I just got a bid today for almost $5,000 just to fix 6 cinder blocks in my.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it was more like 50
It
or.
depends how much they do. If they're trying to do, you know, the whole brick enclosure.
Well,
it's
and
gonna be a
I've
lot
seen it,
bigger.
there's a lot of brick that's around this.
I don't think.
There's
that's
a
what-
lot of brick
I don't
and
think
it,
that's what they're talking about though, but
so in any case, you know, let's,
Sounds
why don't we
Which
go
way do you
ahead?
go?
It's gonna be a long.
Why don't we go ahead
Yeah.
and move to vote on this? Do we have, to vote yes, how many people vote yes to move this forward? 2, how many vote no? 4, well, it
2-4.
it
2-4
doesn't
and 1.
carry,
Yeah.
yeah, so it'll be no.
But I think we, you know, we have to be careful in writing the letter to,
Yeah.
you know, tell them that the hurdles that they need to do, and maybe they'll
Encourage
decide
them
to
to
do it.
apply.
Encourage-
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the letter is the same, whether we voted yes or no,
Yeah,
frankly.
right.
It's just, since we voted no, it's, here's what the hurdles you have to surmount for year 2.
If to be funded year 10.
But I would say it's the same letter, because the issues are the same.
But I think we need to spell out all those hurdles
Yeah.
in that, so that when they come back, if they come back for the eligibility application next time, it's a lot easier.
More
It
advanced.
should be a lot easier for us to vote for it, yes or no.
Oh,
Yeah.
let's keep going.
All right,
Did you have
Pepperly-
green on Pope's Pond?
We haven't gotten to that yet.
no, we didn't get to that one, that was yellow. So Pepperly Playground,
Did we skip Forbes? Or
we did, but
We have.
we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. It's just I'm jumping around.
Oh, I
Couldn't
see.
see where we were, sorry.
And that was the reason to categorize it. So Peverly Playground, there was 6 yellows and one red.
And did we
Any-
determine who owns it?
So it is a Concom. So I think the biggest issue with this one is it's conservation land. And so I think, that's a hurdle to cross. And so,
Maybe, I mean, we
it could be a hurdle to cross. And so I think that's gonna be, getting buy-in from the Concom and is probably the biggest hurdle for that one. I think it's a
And
great
the
project.
communication between the applicant and the Conservation Commission is, it seems, at least the hearing.
Well, and one thing that I was thinking about I was thinking about other potential, even for just this project, for a playground on the west side of Milton. Pagoda Circle is another place that's got open land there. I think it might be, that's a possibility to throw out there. I just think this is more for planning purposes, so it could either be looked at either one. But I think it's a great project. I just don't know the legal hurdles and everything else.
I think we indicated in our, preliminary discussion that for them to submit an application, they had to address that issue. And they had to resolve that issue, whether, a playground use was illegally allowable on it. Because you'd have to go back to the original documents that acquired the land and things like that. I mean, there's informal recreation that goes on there now, but whether they could build a playground there, I think they need to find out and resolve that issue legally as part of their preparing a proposal. And so it needs not only buy-in from the Conservation Commission and neighbors and things, but it does require them to find from town council or whatever, whether that's an allowable use. So that would be part of their proposal, I think.
Yeah, I'd wanna see that they talk to the neighbors.
Yeah.
It could be a fantastic spot. We haven't gotten to the bridge yet, but if that bridge did ever get built, the playground there really could be a nice,
It's a nice combo, potentially.
potential.
So I think that's probably why most of us are on yellow,
Right.
because who knows, but I would rather err on the side of give them the chance, give them the chance for 2 months to convince us. And
They
so
didn't really have a plan either, right?
They're preparing a plan.
they're preparing,
This
yeah,
is
they're
money
trying.
to prepare
This
a
is
plan.
money to prepare for
This
it.
is the plan, right?
This is the plan.
But I think, it's not, it's again, it's $40,000 request, so in order to invest that type of money,
We would want to make
you
sure
want to make sure
that it's doable.
it's got past the
Yeah, we certainly have to resolve that.
But I would also say
Yes.
in the comments that Pagoda might be another alternative site.
But that's
Yeah,
suggesting.
it is.
We can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know the
Not in
park
writing.
department is
Yeah.
thinking of that
Not
as an
writing.
alternative site
Right.
if this doesn't work, but.
So, do I have a vote to put this forward to the funding?
But this is the same situation where do we give them, tell them what hurdles they have to overcome that. It's the
Yes.
same situation as the last one.
But I don't think it's as many
It's
hurdles.
not as many hurdles.
I don't think it's as
really
many
one
hurdles.
question.
It's one hurdle,
Two
if they can
questions,
do
whether
it.
the Concom supports it and whether legally it can be done.
Right.
And they should be able to resolve that in time for their.
Have they met with the Concom?
Proposal.
They-
I don't know. Whether formally
You know,
they have,
I don't know,
there's been
I don't know if they
discussion.
formally have.
I don't think
I know
they
that there's been
formally
some
have.
discussions,
Yeah.
but
That
They would need to prove it
That
to
would
us.
help me with my decision if
yeah.
I knew they were already.
But that's the January decision, not
Yeah.
tonight's
Okay,
decision.
so- Yeah, I'm gonna vote the same way, just to move this forward, but I would propose that we.
I think the letter has to say, for us to consider the funding, their proposal has to address the issue of the legality of their use.
Right. So all those in favor? So that one's a yes.
I would just add to what Pete said too, and I think I raised this at the meeting, but how it interacts with the bridge or the potential bridge, just physically where it is, where the bridge is. That's why I was like so focused on where is that bridge.
So that's our next topic,
That's the purpose
is
of
the
planning
post.
grant, is to to
Right.
figure
Yeah.
if they
Right.
do it, where they put it, and,
Right. But it's
Yeah.
fairly clear that a lot of the parties had not talked. So,
Yes.
at least at the time of that meeting, so I think that would be important. for
Yeah.
them to-
I agree. Well, and the Concom's is the applicant for the bridge, so.
Correct.
So that's our next one. There was 5 that voted green, 2 that voted yellow.
oh, the bridge now.
That is the bridge. So,
I was one of the yellows, and again, I was just yellow because I think they all need to be fleshed out a little more.
Fleshed out a little.
But
you would go ahead and move
Yeah.
forward.
Yes, sir.
So, do I have, does everyone want to move that one forward?
Yes.
So, that one will
When
move
did
forward.
you?
Oh, yes.
It's good because I think we threw that in the decision for the ice house, that they had to connect up to the conservation land.
Yes, they do.
All right, so we have, all right, so the next one that I have on here is the Milton America Baseball, the 30,000 that's there. 4 voted green and 3 voted yellow. Any commentary on that one?
That's from Mary C. Lane.
Mary's,
Dugouts,
fencing.
it's, I think it's a
Additional backstop.
backstop. I don't think that's dugouts, although I can
Yes,
look at it.
it's
Is it
fencing.
dugouts?
Fencing.
Fencing.
Fencing,
Fencing
it's
around the
fencing. and-
Yeah, they're fencing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. So
I
this
mean,
is great recreational.
Yeah, it's a straight recreation. They gave us, a proposal from a fence guy to put in backstop and stuff, but it's for $16,000. And you're looking for 30. I think when they put in their proposal, it should be, cover what's all in the 30. It's not just the backstop, but it's the fencing around the dugouts. They said there's a possibility of some netting that might go up and stuff. but
Their balls going.
Their
to the-
proposal should,
Should
have the
include
full
everything.
scope of
Full
work.
scope, yeah.
So if it's only 16, it's 16.
So,
Okay.
All in favor of that?
all those in, everyone in favor of baseball? All right, there's 6 of us. Wendy's vote. All right, so the last 2, I believe, are the pickleball courts and the Forbes house. So, pickleball courts, we had 5 that were under red and 2 that are under yellow. Any commentary for the pickleball courts?
If I was a yellow, I think this is, I'm gonna be pretty consistent here. I think we should err on the side of inviting people back. I think this one falls into the similar category of the Spalding Garden one, in that they have a lot of work to do. So I don't think it's ready for funding, but I think we should, they certainly, of all the applicants, demonstrated the most public support at the initial stage, which wasn't a requirement, I know, but there is clear, I'm a Kelly Field neighbor, there's clearly a constituency out there for dedicated pickleball courts. I think we should invite them back, but that wasn't a good plan. And it's not ready for funding, and as is, they will probably get rejected. But I think I would like to see them work actively to improve it and to work with town bodies, and I personally think they should be thinking about multiple sites, but that's another.
Yeah, I'll just go back to just to the garden, I think that they should come back, but they should come back the next round.
Yeah.
Like a month and a half is just too, there's a lot of hurdles here to cross to
Yeah.
get them to where they need to be. If they put in for planning for them, maybe perhaps that would be a little bit easier to stomach. But I think there's a lot of hurdles.
What about if they so
Redid it.
if I was the applicant here and I heard this feedback, I might radically reduce the request and make it a planning grant. But right, instead of waiting, I know it's only 3 to 6 months, but instead of waiting for year 2, I might say, good points. Hopefully they say that. and submit a much smaller planning grant that gets them to a place where they can come back for a full-fledged.
I guess I'm curious, you sit on Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And so, have this same group come before your,
Every meeting.
every meeting they come?
Yeah.
And so,
They're a fantastic group, like Tom said, they're organic, the vocal, I love them, I really do, I think they're fantastic. I got on the park commission, I think 5 years ago, and I think at the very first meeting, a gentleman came in, pickleball, and I was thinking to myself, have I been sleeping like McCabe, but what is he talking about?
yeah,
Pickleball, and I've never, but now, you know, there's courts in Weymouth, Braintree just built courts, Randolph is building courts. I agree, I think with most of the committee that it is, the planning is not great and it is a little bit too early, but I'd love to see something in the future. I think they're a great group, more and more people are playing it, but, you know, they need a site. And the planning idea is great, but they need a site first to kind of,
but they're also probably the group that doesn't have the money for that,
that's
to
right.
do that. So
Yeah,
the committee needs to decide, do we want to engage and push them?
I would say, my personal bias would be to move them to the second stage, but in the letter say, we would encourage you to turn this into a planning grant as opposed to a full-fledged funding grant. Well,
What about the fact that it's coming from an individual? I mean, why isn't the Parks Department on this?
Well, and that would be another, that would have to, they would
Well, wait a
have,
minute,
they would have to
who's-
go and
who-
fund.
Where's the money going?
The money would have to go to the town. It would have to go,
The applicant is a private individual.
right, it would have to go through Parks and Rec. So that's another hurdle that has to go through there, and it wouldn't have to be supported by Parks and Rec.
So is that a difficult hurdle?
Yeah, it's a good going, yeah. I mean, they would have to get, you know, they're a little wishy-washy exactly where they want it. At first, it was they wanted to take out 2 tennis courts at Kelly and put 2 more, but that got struck down because they get used and the high school needs them. Then they just said Andrews, we're gonna stick it in a corner at Andrews, and you know, a study needs to be done to figure out.
And community,
And community.
anything
100%.
Andrews is really
That's
tough.
right.
So I just
working on
think,
a project in Andrews now.
Absolutely.
But see how, I'm trying to see how they can go forward at all, because they can't be building pickleball courts on town land.
No.
I don't think they're a proper applicant.
they're not, they would have to go be a co-applicant with Parks and Rec if they had buy-in to do
Or
that.
the
Oh, you
Park
can't give
Department
them
would have
money.
no, you can be an
But they
applicant.
can be an applicant if they
Yeah.
were a co-applicant with Parks and Rec, and we
So
gave
we-
money to the Parks
In
and Rec.
Boston, the organization I used to
Yeah.
be the executive director of was an applicant for CPA funds in Boston. But in the application, we said we wanted the money to go to the Department of Housing or, you know, Department of Neighborhood Development at the time. And that's what happened. We got funded. My organization didn't receive a
Yeah,
penny.
but what does their application say?
Well, I'm not saying, I think
That's
we
what
all
it
agree
doesn't
the
say
application
there.
as
Didn't say very much.
is not ready for funding at this point. But again, we're talking about whether we ask them to revise the application.
Well,
And
I think you should be telling them to revise the application to have it be coming from a proper party.
Yeah, that would be
Correct,
part of it.
correct.
That would,
That would be part
I
of the
totally agree.
comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can, and I think we said that in the meeting, that we can't fund an individual.
Or
But
they could form a 501c3.
they could. I mean, they're, or,
Again, another hurdle.
Another, so I'm gonna continue to come back on that. It's January 13th. This, to me, is a huge hurdle. That's why I put up these, you know,
But
the
I feel
traffic
like
light.
that's up to the applicant to decide. Like, you
Yeah.
know, I don't feel comfortable us making that decision, like, oh, there's no way you can figure this out in 3 months. Maybe they can, maybe they already have, who knows? But I feel like, you know, in the same way that the hurdles that we identified for the Spalding Garden, I feel like we should let that burden be on the applicant to decide whether or not they're able to answer those questions in the time that we're giving them. And if not, then presumably they'd come back next time.
But there's another thing that we can say, and which is what I'm thinking about the Spalding Garden, which is your proposal doesn't fit within the parameters of things that we fund. It's not a public use.
Which makes it different.
Yeah, it's not just,
But that's
A
not
number-
entirely clear either, though, is it?
well, that was, all right, maybe it's not, but proof that it is. Because the impression given at a meeting that we had, where the young woman made a presentation, was that it was not
That it was not
a public
a public
space.
space. Right,
That
and
if I
I was
wanted-
not there at the
If I
meeting.
wanted to go visit it, I had to make an appointment with her, or with somebody from the garden club.
Yeah, I think it's fair to give that type of feedback, that's not
That
acceptable.
doesn't,
That doesn't pass muster, that won't pass muster.
That doesn't
But I
fit
think-
within
I
the
agree
things.
with Wendy, I think we should, obviously Wendy and I have lost 2 votes on this, but we're probably gonna lose a third. But I think, I would like to see this committee err on the side of always inviting people back, unless it's a slam dunk, no, like, we've made we made 2 decisions before this meeting to reject 2 applicants, the library and the Swanton project, for good reasons. We made another decision on the fire headquarters for good reasons. Those were pretty, clear cut. But these, I think we're substituting our judgment, saying it's a high hurdle. I can sit here and defend that statement, that they are high hurdles, but I think we shouldn't be making the judgment for the applicant that they can't meet that hurdle. And if they can't, they won't apply. And this is public money, right?
I mean,
We're
this one's a
stewards of
little
public
bit-
money, and I think we should err on the side of letting the applicants move forward unless it's very clear that it doesn't qualify. So
I think
with
in
feedback though,
Yeah.
with the type of
With
feedback we're
feedback.
giving, because, and I think, somebody said this, but I think some applicants will choose to wait till year 2. But that's fine, that's their choice as opposed to us making a decision for them. But I can see both sides of this, definitely, but
I think my concern is,
that's mine.
I would think that people applying to us would spend a little time thinking about their project and, what it needs to be a project and things like that. And, although this group has been talking to the park board forever about pickleball, they've never presented a plan to the park board to put 8 pickleball courts at Andrews Park, and
Well, I agree. This project, as presented, is 100%, in my opinion, not ready for funding. Not even close to ready for funding. But all I'm talking about, and I think I agree with Wendy here, is we're substituting our judgment for the applicant's judgment. And I don't think we should be doing that. But
I think this one's different than the Spalding Garden, because we had 40 people show up before this committee. I'd at least like to give them the benefit of the doubt. They have the energy, like Tom said, and I would err on that side and say, there's a huge hurdles here, but go ahead and see what you can do. If they have all these hurdles to cross, and I think their application would have to change quite a bit. They would have to get buy-in from the Parks and Rec, obviously, because they would have to get them as a co-applicant and all that. So I do think that's a bit different because they have had a lot of energy behind them and
But
et
to
cetera.
be fair though, Rob, you could also get 40 garden club members
You
in
could.
that room to cheer on the Spalding Garden project too.
Good.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there wasn't, right?
Well, there wasn't, but I think also, there wasn't an expectation for that. I think that this is a learning process. I don't think that there was, I think that the pickleballers took an incredible initiative to do it. But I think that for next funding round, we're probably gonna see a lot more advocates showing up in support of these proposals. Now that they see, well, we didn't know we could invite all of our friends,
Yeah.
which I think is a great thing. And it is a wonderful opportunity to ask more people the questions that we have. And hopefully, have someone in the room that has all the answers that we're looking for. But if not, I think that we need to give these organizations and entities an opportunity to gather that information and present it to us in a formal application, not just a one-sheet proposal here. You know, and that's what the second round of applications is for, right? To gather all that information.
Well, in this case in particular, where access is a sort of different issue
Yeah.
to me. And I agree that to invite a planning grant with the blah, 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 that would make sense for them to give them the opportunity, because there is momentum there, there's no question.
But it's also access. It would be on town land.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Yeah.
the two applications are a lot different, are different in that case.
I mean, where they are, the process is the same, but
Yeah,
where
exactly.
they are is.
But Spalding they have control of the land, which is not the case with the pickleball.
Right,
They don't have control of the property on which they want to live.
right. But even, going back to the pickleballers, they don't have necessarily the buy-in from the town yet either. So I see it, it's a huge hurdle, right?
Yeah.
So they both are huge hurdles, and that's probably why it was a red light for both of them. But in any case, is there any more discussion around this? If not, can we go to a vote? Who votes to push this one forward to the funding round? Alright, so we've got 6. So that one will go forward to the funding round with many comments.
You
That's my
were,
letter.
you were no on that?
I'm
Yeah, okay.
All right, last but not least, Forbes House. Commentary to the Forbes House. So just so everyone, this was 1 green light, 3 yellow lights, and 3 red lights. So that's why I
The
say
most
it's a lot. The most variation.
opinion.
It's also the most expensive ask out of the applications.
And bond.
Well, so that, yes, they originally asked for bonding as well.
I mean, I wasn't, I'm handicapped because I wasn't here last week. I like elements of this. I was a yellow vote, and I would be consistent in voting to move this forward. I would be a yes vote on this, but my concern, I don't know if it was addressed last week, was the electrical and plumbing systems interior build out for office space, particularly that aspect of it. That feels like
You couldn't,
it's not eligible?
It's not eligible.
Okay.
Um,
Was that discussed?
It was
Okay,
discussed,
all
so
right, sorry.
we discussed, and I had suggested, like, the exterior renovation could be,
Yeah.
that's historical
Yeah.
piece, and to break the project up into phases. So that was some feedback that we gave.
I mean, the other feedback I would say, being consistent with, the public, I appreciate this comment about that the public does have access to this, but I'm not sure that's appreciated as much in town.
Well, the reason I brought it up
Yep.
was that when I was on the board, one of the efforts we tried to make was, so how do we make that better known in the town?
Right.
Obviously, we didn't do a very good job, but
No,
you're
but-
right, you're right.
But this could, in some ways, a grant like this or an award like this could be a catalyst to helping, even the publicity around doing that,
Sure.
Could be a tool to help educate town members. Come on in, and use.
This is where your money went, come and
Yeah.
enjoy it.
I mean,
Wasn't it the idea
we haven't
about
talked
all
about
the barns
signage on
being
these
public,
projects, but that's-
kind of covered activity space anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, that it was
Community.
open for public, community uses. I think the reflection that I had was that we should ask them to prioritize the pieces of the proposal that they were looking at. It spelled out amounts of money, but I think prioritizing, and the lockup did a good job, I think, of prioritizing. and explaining, you know, why the walls were prioritized over the roof. So if the Forbes,
And also, the cost of construction, I see this on a daily basis today. They're up 30 to 40% cost of construction. That was in, so that estimate was 2 years old. So that's also another huge hurdle for this project. I'm not saying that it's not there, but I think when they come back, if we do elect them to come back, we need updated costs of constructions. Also, that's a feasibility study.
yeah,
And this project is big, it's complex. There needs to be more planning for this project to go through to get actual construction documents forward so that you can see the scope of work that's there. I just don't see it. It's not there yet. It needs to be there, and we're basing that on a feasibility study. So I think there's still hurdles there, and I think they should break down a lot of the pieces of the project. And I think that's a way to go forward. But again, it would be this committee leading this process so like funding it right away. And so that's what I'm saying. Like if we funded it right away, where is the? I just want to make sure that is there other fundraising here? Has it been committed? All those pieces. If it was put in place and they already had it and it came to the committee, it seems like that would get you to the end goal.
Yeah,
Would seem good. But it's almost like we're coming in with the seed money first, and then we'll get the fundraising and everything else. And part of it too, I think at the last meeting I would discuss this too. Historic tax credits can amount for a 30% of a budget, so that's another way they can fund. And so I don't know how they're going to go about funding the complete project.
yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I agree, Rob, that they specifically said that this would be seed money that they would use to start fundraising. And I kind of would see our role as, if they did some fundraising and they were,
Especially
$500
for a
million
private
short,
organization.
and we could finish the job for them, I think that might be more appropriate than asking us to come up front and be the seed money. The other thing that I'm concerned about is the notion of bonding, our first time out the door. To me, what I'm really concerned about is that when we go to town meeting, this is our first time before town meeting asking for a vote, and although we can legally bond it, I think we should be really conservative and get some, I would hate for, if it's bonded, it's got to get a 2/3 vote, and I would hate for us, the first time we go in front of the public, to get a no vote, and 2/3 is very hard to achieve. So I think
for a
we
private
should
project.
be.
We got to be
for
very
private.
careful.
So I think we want to do things that we feel really solid about, so that the first time through is an overwhelming success for this committee.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to put back this list. I'm always looking at the end goal and the budget. If I just took out that $1 million and the $500,000 of the pickleball court, we are at $1.7 million. That is our budget.
Well, then if we take the fire department.
Well, the fire station too, if we took that back, that's 1 point, so now we're back down to 1.2.
Which means we have some money we can carry
We do
over
have some
next
money.
year, to fund things that we'll have less money next year.
I think everybody's raising good points. I want to ask Kathleen, have you seen, and I generally agree with, I think we should look to be gap fillers as opposed to seed money, but I don't know if that's going to be always possible. So have you seen, and would it be permissible for us to do, for lack of a better term, a contingent grant, a contingent award that doesn't leave our pot of money?
Well, we've done it for purchases.
But it puts.
Yeah, no, I've done it for purchases,
Okay.
where, we've had $2 million purchase of open space. And so we voted $1.5 million in CPA money, and then if, that would be available. If
If
they
they
came up with
do
the
A, B, and
500,
C.
they came up with the other 500.
Yeah.
So we've done those sort of contingent purchases. In this one, for this kind of construction project, where we're not buying, it's a little harder to do it that way. But you could give them a grant agreement that says that okay, we will fund up to this number. But it's contingent upon you providing donations of X and Y and Z. So, but unfortunately, you'd still have to vote the highest amount that you were gonna give.
Right.
So you would have that bonding in place, you still have to have that vote. It's got contingencies on it, like any other kind of deal, but you'd still have to go through with the 2/3.
Well, we wouldn't need 2/3 only if we bonded the money.
I said, that's
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
saying,
yeah, yeah.
that's what I'm saying, if you were
If
bonding.
it's a
Oh, right.
If you're
But I'm
bonding.
thinking of I mean,
I don't know where we end up.
like hypothetically, if we said, we'll
Fund
We'll,
$500,000.
we'll show our expression of interest in this project by awarding the project I'm just gonna make these numbers up, $100,000. Contingent upon you raising X, you know.
Well, as I
and-
said,
and that's a-
so I would do, you would do a grant
Yeah.
agreement, for example.
Yeah.
So you would vote the $100,000, and you would say that you would do it, there'd be a disbursement schedule. So I'm not gonna give you the $100,000 right off the bat.
Until,
I'm gonna give you
Yeah.
$5,000 for the surveys and whatever, $10,000 for this and blah, blah, blah. And then upon demonstration of donations of X amount, we let the rest of it go. But you've already voted the
Yeah.
grant.
no, it's a real vote,
Yeah,
but
But then
it's,
you could stick
it puts the
strings on it.
burden on them to meet whatever hurdles.
Well, and then you also say if you don't do anything for the next 3
Yeah,
years,
you
it
don't
comes
get the
back.
A better, a possible better
But
way
what,
to
but what
phrase
you're
it.
talking about is like a complete different application. Like, we're basically recreating their application to go.
Yeah.
But another way to think about it, which could be an opportunity for them, is to name it a challenge grant instead of a contingency.
Yeah,
So it's
that's a better
really
word, yeah,
motivation
yes.
for them to go out and say, look what we've got.
that's better phrasing, yeah.
Mm.
I also worry that this would be the only one that we're proposing that's on private land and not, on public land.
What type of community events do they do now currently?
There is some, like, there's the Barn Fest
Yeah.
and whatever, but these
Lincoln
are also,
Day
but
and
these
there's
are also
fundraisers.
money. This is
Yeah.
also money for them, so
Plus,
we're gonna be funding this, and they're a private organization, and they still
But we're
raise
gonna
money
get a
on stage.
restriction, we're gonna get a restriction in return for that. You're gonna purchase a preservation restriction, or an access easement, or something like that. So, that's when you give money to a private entity. in most
They're
cases-
saying now, we've had access.
Well, we
but
would
no
have
one's-
it be in a document.
Yeah, but
I,
there's already been access.
yeah, but.
Nobody knows about it and nobody uses it, it's not Cunningham Pond.
I
I don't know about that. I mean, I
I
think
don't
people
know.
probably go and hang
They
out on
probably
the
do.
grounds. It's like,
I have,
yeah, sure.
but I'm saying is that, so that when you give, it's not unusual to use CPA funds for private property. And as a matter of fact, I mean, most of the time, you're buying open space, you're paying somebody for it, and you're doing affordable housing, and you're paying a developer for it. And so, historic preservation, you're getting a historic preservation restriction for that money. So most of the time, you are getting something, and this private property, private entity is not unusual, but, there's strings attached. So, you say, okay, fine, it'll be $1 million, but in return, we're gonna get, some restrictions, some access easements,
Don't
something.
they have it already? Isn't there historic preservation on it
E-
already?
Who knows?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I mean, even if it's considered within, National Historic Register, that does not necessarily put restrictions on it automatically. So I don't know what those restrictions are that may have been placed on it. But, so you would
Yeah.
say, and I may not be using your correct terminology, by buying a preservation easement, we would say, yeah, we'll give you the money, but you can't take the cupola off the barn.
Well,
because
yeah,
that's
there'd be some,
there's a
there'd be a
historic
facade,
element to
most
that.
of the time it's a facade easement, you're not gonna touch
Right.
the inside, you don't really care about that.
But-
And you'll say, okay, the outside has to look like X, you can't do anything with the outside.
Okay,
Usually the inside, we don't get involved. But the exterior, you'd have some kind of preservation restriction on it. They, I don't know that they have a no-build restriction on the rest of the property, I mean, that's the other thing to think about. I mean, we don't know because we haven't done the title. There's opportunity to use the money in return for preservation restriction of some sort.
One of the other things that the town of Plymouth CPC does that I think's been really beneficial is that when they've given money to historic sites, the CPC has put up a sign that says, you know, preservation works,
Yeah.
and talks about the project, talks about the CPA, talks about, you know, the work that the committee does. And it's a great way to publicize the strengths of the CPA. And you know, I think that it's, for me, it's like free advertising for the CPA, which again, you know, when time comes for a town meeting to vote again on whether or not we want to keep the CPA, these kinds of publicity opportunities are really, really important.
I mean, I think some of the big benefits of the Forbes House barn is there isn't a very public meeting spot in Milton right now. That could be it. So I do see a lot of upside for it, but it seems like, just like everything else, there's a lot of hurdles in this project to go, and we would be seeding the money, for all the better words, for it. So I think there's a lot of hurdles there, but it's interesting. This is a tough one.
Again, I think,
Up to them.
Give them the back.
I think give them the benefit of the doubt, have them come back. This is important feedback that they should be listening to, and let's see. Yeah, they're, unlike some of the entities, they're a staffed entity that
An established entity, a
established, that's
nonprofit.
got resources to respond in reasonable time to some of these suggestions, and whether they can meet it by January 13th or not, I don't know, but
I kind of think differently. I think it should be a no. I don't think we should be giving seed money, and I don't think we want a bond coming
again,
right
that's
out
part
of
of the
that.
I'm not saying we should,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's part of the feedback.
I
So
don't
it
understand.
goes to the challenge, you know, Jenny's challenge grant idea, or I'm not saying that was your idea, that was my idea, but it was. you
But
know,
it'll give them an opportunity to come back to
To
the
re-
board and
reshape this
rethink it or
proposal.
whatever. I
reshape
mean,
this proposal.
I don't know, I'm very much on the fence about this one, but
I'm confused, this says, when it says in your column of bonding, it says Forbes House, no. So why are we talking about bonding?
well,
They proposed.
they proposed yes. I think
Oh,
it.
yeah, that
Well,
should be,
it should be a yes, and I thought if we were gonna bond it, we would have to go before town meeting. We would need a 2/3 vote. I don't know if we necessarily want to go do that, but
Well, I don't think this project is ready to be,
no.
for us to bond. I mean, I think, you know, the whole seed
For
money
us.
issue is.
so they should come back next year with a different proposal.
Yeah, I mean, here's where you get into the philosophical thing.
Yeah.
You know, again,
I could stomach, like if Tom came back and if they had a plan and said, listen, we're gonna get 30% from state and federal money, and we were gonna get 60% of the money privately raised, and said, we're gonna ask for $300,000 or something, right? Or whatever it is, I don't know, I'm just throwing it hypothetically out there.
Yeah.
But they don't have any of that, and so,
well, but we don't know that they wouldn't respond to this conversation by coming back
Correct.
with that. with
right,
that.
whatever it is,
And
yeah.
that's my point about all these applications is we don't know what the applicant will do after hearing our feedback.
Right.
And we're making assumptions, and I don't think we should make those assumptions. I think we should let the applicant respond. And if they respond appropriately, that convinces the 9 of us, then they're gonna get some funding. And remember, we also have the opportunity, they can apply for $3 billion, but we can fund 5,000, right?
Yeah.
We can knock it down. We don't have to ask for, we don't have to agree with anything that they, I mean, you know, there's a grant agreement and stuff like that, but we have control over how much we give, and for what purposes. So I
I guess, you know, I'm a community organizer by training, and I think in these early years particularly, but maybe even going forward, building and maintaining a political constituency in this town for this law, and having people feel good about this law is very important, I think, for Milton, for the future, and for citizen buy-in. So that's why I err on the side of inviting people back to be, hopefully to be responsive to the opinions of the members of this committee. But I think just too many no's is not a good political look.
I agree
I
with
think kind of the opposite. I think, you know, we're demonstrating to the public that we're taking management of their money seriously and expect, you know.
That's what we're gonna do in the second vote.
So we're gonna put all our decisions off to February.
I think we're making huge, important decisions today with the feedback we're giving them. All I'm saying is we're substituting our judgment for the applicant's judgment, and I don't believe that's the proper thing.
I'd like to see the applicants put more effort into developing.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
But
agreeing with you.
The original, eligibility, I would
We
hope
didn't
that they
ask
would
for
put
it.
more of an effort.
We didn't ask
Yeah.
them to do that. It was a one pager. We can't blame. It's the first year.
Well,
We can't blame them.
I will go back. We have 9 yeses to go on to funding, so I feel like we're making progress.
Yeah, no,
So I think we're
right,
making progress.
We're
Right.
quibbling about the.
We're quibbling about
About the
it.
details.
We have one more. This is the last application.
Yeah.
I think we're on the fence of it, but I think if there isn't any more commentary on the Forbes house, I think we should move to a vote.
Well, the only question I have that seems unresolved is about the bond or not. And it seems to me we have to indicate whether they should proceed with that or not. And again, to your point, Tom, that who's it for us to say that it'll be difficult for them to pass 2/3?
Well, but it's our committee that's going to have to go before
Oh, yeah.
town meeting to
We do
to
have
ask
to
for the
make that
bonding.
Right.
So that's going to fall on us, not the applicant.
Right.
So
Correct.
I'm,
Well, yeah, sort of. But I mean, we'll be speaking on their behalf, basically.
right,
We'll be speaking on our behalf.
on our behalf, and so I'm of,
They're not doing a presentation
Right.
at town meeting.
Right.
They would be.
we would
Yeah.
be, and
Yeah.
we would have to have the binder for all those reasons. And where this project is currently, I would be for not to bond this project, right? I think definitely I would not be apt to say we're gonna give them $1 million, and
It's too big a risk.
it's too big of a risk, it's, so I would say, that's why I had on there probably no originally. I just think it's a big ask to do that.
Yeah, but if they, right. So my only point is if they come back with a $100,000 challenge grant type idea,
Or whatever.
we might, if that's not bonded, well, that's a radical revamp of this proposal, but that's plausible. Certainly if I was the executive director of a nonprofit and I was hearing this feedback, I would give serious consideration to coming in with something
Oh, yeah.
greatly revised. Because knowing that the $1 million bonding thing is probably not starting.
So do you want to put forward that vote then specifically, no bond and a revision?
Well, I don't.
We don't even have to
haven't
vote
voted
on that. The
but-
only thing we need to
but
vote
in
on
comments,
is
yes, I would say the
Comments,
comment
that's
letter,
right, comments,
Yeah.
the comment letter
So
should.
that would be the understanding of.
Yeah, that we don't have an appetite for bonding this
Yeah.
project. I think it puts too much of the taxpayer dollar at risk. That of a project that's not advanced enough, in its financing to justify it.
I think we also need to specify that we will be seeking some type of historic restriction, because that
We did say that though at the last meeting, and
Oh,
we
was
said
it
we
this time?
No,
we
we
said
have to
we
say
said
in the letter,
we
yeah.
said we said that we would request that, and they said they were okay with that.
Okay, good, good,
Yeah,
good,
they
good.
said they were okay.
They want it to be like a bait and switch. Oh, by the way.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, no, I think they were aware of that,
Okay.
So I think we should, so we're voting for no bonding, it's getting late, no bonding, and whether or not we want them to go on to the funding round with amendments and commentary that we spoke about. All those in favor of putting it forward to funding? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is a yes.
Who's writing that letter? Who's writing that letter?
I think yes, I'm writing that. All right,
We might want to.
So when we,
that one's gonna need a lot of, well, we can pass it back and
Exactly.
forth.
I can, so all these letters, I imagine we'll send them to the full committee to look at to see if they have any
I
comments.
think
or
that would be
anything.
worth, so we, the three of us have divided and conquered the list, but I think it will be useful to send all these around, especially with the comments, because I'm sure we might have missed some or not. So just so we're clear then, the applications that we have moved forward to funding are the Affordable Housing Trust, the Forbes House, the town lockup, the Turner's Pond Path improvement, the Milton Farmers Market, the Peverly Playground, the Pokes Pond Pedestrian Bridge, the Milton America Baseball, pickleball courts, and the stadium lighting upgrade. And the two that won't be moving forward are the Milton Fire Headquarters and the Spalding Garden Masonry Stabilization.
And just so we're transparent with the public, if they ask why, the reason is because the fire headquarters, there's the issue with the supplanting of funding that's already been allocated. And the reason for Spalding?
And Spalding,
We don't think it meets the definition of a historic resource in the statute. It's not on the list, it's not on the local historic commission's list.
Is there also an issue about public access
Well, I think that's,
to be determined?
that's
To
to
be
be determined as
All right.
well. But
I-
I think
I-
the
well-
basic problem is it doesn't meet the definition
But,
as a
but
historic resource.
how do we know that?
I just read the statute to see whether, they didn't say in their application that they are on the list of National Register of Historic Places.
They're on national register for
Well,
sure.
they didn't
Could
say in
be
their one
municipal.
page.
Yeah, but I think the other issue is that we don't know what they're doing. $5,000 to do a masonry,
And if
Then
that's
it almost
repair,
falls in with some of these others,
I
and
know.
let them come back.
Yeah, I would
I think the
move
basic
to-
issue is that I don't think they qualify as a
Right.
historic resource.
I agree with all of that, but I would move to reconsider just Spalding Garden. And I would give them the hurdles that we gave the others. This would be 11 of 12 projects, with the 12th being a pretty clear cut, it's supplanting. I think there's justification for them, but I would
There's hurdles with these other projects too, I agree with Tom.
I think we should be consistent, and they either meet it or don't, but it's a small application, and I think we should invite them to address those issues in the letter, and they'll either be able to do that or they won't, and
so all those in favor of moving it forward to funding?
Yeah. It was the same letters, you said,
Yeah,
not really one
yeah.
way or the other.
All right,
And
so
it
that,
would be-
They have
It makes
hurdles
the
and
decision
they have
there
hurdles and,
as opposed to ours as to whether.
Right. And I think maybe we change our language a little bit, moving to a second round as opposed to moving forward to
fund.
funding. I mean, no, it's semantics
I
a little
think the
bit,
word
but
we use is full application.
Invite a
Full
full
application.
invite a
application.
full application, I think that's a
Yes.
great word, because it doesn't imply, in terms of the eventual yes or no.
All right, so.
Good work, committee. I mean, no, I mean, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Will it get easier?
I don't think so.
All right, so Julie, I hope you took good notes.
She's got
We
her
got,
phone.
because we got some long letters.
So do we need a January?
Have a nice.
We're not, yeah, so the next meeting won't be till January 25th. So to be honest, the rest of the bulk of this work will fall on us to put these letters out in the next week.
So I would make a motion
Thank
to
you for
adjourn.
doing that.
Yes.
Unless I think we need a
Second, all those in favor?
Have a lovely holiday, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, advisor.
Yeah.
Thank God.